Amina stepped off the crowded bus, holding a small bag close to her chest as if it carried her whole life. The city air felt different from the air in her village, heavier, faster, and full of sound she wasn't used to. Cars rushed by, people talked loudly on their phones, and tall buildings surrounded her like giants, watching every move she made. She looked around carefully, trying not to appear lost. Back home, everyone knew everyone, and no one needed directions. But here, everything felt unfamiliar. Even the footpaths seemed to have their own rules. She took a quiet breath and reminded herself that she had come this far for a reason. Amina walked towards the main road, following the map she had drawn on a small piece of paper. She didn't trust herself with a smartphone yet, even though she had one in her pocket. She had practiced using it many times, but something about relying on hand-drawn directions felt safer. Her handwriting was neat, and every turn was marked with careful detail. The company she was headed to, Almatech Solutions, was one she had heard about for years. Even in her small village, people spoke of the company with respect. It was known for creating opportunities, for training thousands, for building new industries. Amina had read everything she could find about it. She had prepared for this moment for months. As she approached the tall glass building, she couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and fear. The entrance alone made her feel tiny. People walked in confidently, dressed in clothes she rarely saw back home. They carried laptops and wore badges with their names printed professionally. Amina clutched her simple bag and stepped inside. The lobby took her by surprise. It was bright, clean, and busy. A large digital screen displayed company updates and upcoming events. Employees hurried from one place to another as if running on invisible schedules. Amina toward the reception desk and waited for the woman behind the counter to finish speaking to someone. The receptionist barely looked up when she finally asked, "Yes. How can I help you?" Amina spoke politely. "I have come to meet the director. I was told to come today." The receptionist glanced at her quickly, then at her clothes, then at her bag. She tried to hide her surprise, but it showed in her eyes. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her tone lighter now, as if she didn't believe Amina could possibly have one. "Yes, I do," Amina said, trying not to let the woman's reaction bother her. She handed over the piece of paper with the appointment details. The receptionist looked at it for a few seconds, then typed something into her computer. "Please wait," she said, her voice more formal now. Amina nodded and stepped aside. But even as she did, she could feel the curious looks of a few people around her. A group of junior employees sitting nearby whispered among themselves. She didn't catch their words, but she understood their expressions: confusion, amusement, judgment. Amina sat on a sofa and placed her bag on her lap. She kept her back straight and her face calm. She had grown up hearing comments like these. People always assumed things about her simply because she came from a village. They didn't know how many nights she had studied under a lantern when the electricity would go out. They didn't know how far she had walked to reach the nearest school. They didn't know how hard she had worked to come here, but she knew, and that was enough. As she waited, she observed the place. The employees typed on laptops, joked with each other, and discussed work with a confidence she admired. She wanted to be part of something meaningful like this. She had the skills. She had the education. She had the determination. She just needed the right chance. A few minutes passed, and a young man walked toward the reception area, holding a coffee cup. He looked at Amina and raised an eyebrow. "New cleaner?" he asked loudly to another coworker. "Or maybe someone waiting for lost and found?" The group laughed softly. Amina heard every word, but she did not react. She kept her eyes on the floor for a moment, then slowly lifted them and looked ahead calmly. She reminded herself that strangers' opinions did not define her. Another employee walked past her and said in a low voice, just loud enough for her to hear, "People from these small areas come with such unrealistic dreams. This is a corporate company. They don't realize that." Amina didn't respond. She didn't want to create a scene or attract attention. She had a goal. She would not let anything distract her from it. A security guard approached the reception desk and looked at the receptionist. "Is everything okay here?" he asked. The receptionist nodded. Yes, she's waiting for approval from the director's office. The guard looked at Amina with a polite nod. She smiled gently in return. At least someone seemed respectful. Minutes turned into nearly half an hour. Amina kept her patience. She had learned long ago that timing in life could never be forced. Everything happened when it was meant to. Finally, the receptionist looked up. "They are checking," she told Amina. "Please wait a little longer." Amina simply nodded. While she waited, she remembered the moment she decided to leave her village. Her father had sat beside her one evening looking out at their small field. "If you stay here, you will always wonder about the life you could have had," he had said. "Go and see the world. You have the ability. Don't hide it just because we come from a simple place." Those words had stayed with her every day. She had promised herself she would build a life that would make her parents proud. A life where she would not be limited by where she came from. Suddenly, a voice broke her thoughts. "Excuse me," the receptionist called. "They want to confirm something. Could you please tell me again who asked you to come?" Amina repeated the name calmly. The receptionist's expression changed again, this time to uncertainty. She whispered something to the security guard, and he stepped back, clearly confused. Then, 2 employees walked toward Amina. They looked her up and down in disbelief. "You?" one of them said. "You are here to meet the director?" Amina nodded. "Yes, I am." They exchanged glances, and one of them said, "There must be some mistake. People like you don't get meetings with the director." Amina felt a small sting, but she still didn't react. "I was asked to come," she said softly. "That is all I know," the man laughed slightly. "This is a professional environment. We don't entertain random visitors. We have rules." Before she could reply, the other man turned to the receptionist. "Call security to escort her out. She's clearly confused." Amina looked down at her bag, holding it tightly. She wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of always being misunderstood. Tired of people assuming things before they even heard her story. But she kept sitting calmly, waiting. The security guard hesitated. He didn't want to disrespect her, but he also didn't want to go against his duty. "Ma'am, maybe you should wait outside until we confirm," he began gently. Amina stood up slowly. She understood their doubt. She understood their assumptions. But she also knew something they didn't, that her life was about to change. So was theirs. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed through the lobby. A senior employee walked out from the elevator holding a file. He glanced at Amina, paused, and then looked again. He recognized her. His eyes widened slightly, and he hurried toward the reception desk. "Is she waiting here?" he asked the receptionist. "Yes. She says she's here to meet the director," the receptionist replied. The man looked shocked. "Why didn't anyone inform me she arrived?" "She is expected upstairs." Everyone froze. The junior employees who had mocked her stared in silence. The receptionist's face went. Pale Amina stood quietly, holding her bag, her calm expression unchanged. The man smiled warmly at her. "Please come with me. The director has been waiting." It's for the first time since she had walked into the building. Every single person in the lobby realized they had judged her without knowing anything about her. Amina followed the man toward the elevator, holding her bag close, not because she was afraid, but because she knew this moment would stay with her forever. This was the beginning of something she had worked her whole life for. Even if no one else could see it yet, she stepped into the elevator, the doors closing behind her. Upstairs, a future she had earned was waiting, and nothing, not assumptions, not judgments, not whispers could take that away from her. Amina followed the senior employee into the elevator, her heart beating quietly but steadily. The man stood beside her, pressing the button for the top floor. He didn't speak much, but there was a polite respect in his posture that felt different from how people downstairs had behaved. The elevator rose smoothly, and with each passing floor, Amina felt the atmosphere shift. She held her bag a little tighter, reminding herself that she had every right to be here. She wasn't an outsider visiting by mistake. She had been called. She had something to offer. And soon, the people who doubted her would see it too. When the elevator doors opened, Top floor looked completely different from the lobby. Here, everything was quiet, organized, and full of purpose. The halls were wide, the walls decorated with framed pictures of the company's achievements. Amina's eyes moved across each frame, taking in the milestones she had admired from afar. The senior employee gestured toward a meeting room. "Please wait here for a moment. I'll inform the director that you've arrived." Amina nodded, offering a small smile. He returned it before hurrying away. She entered the room and sat down carefully. The table was long, the chairs comfortable, and a tray of water sat neatly in the center. She had never been in a place like this before, but instead of feeling nervous, she felt strangely steady. Maybe it was because she had spent years preparing. Maybe it was because she had learned not to be shaken by people's opinions. Whatever the reason, she felt ready. Her thoughts drifted back to the lobby. The looks on people's faces, the whispers, the dismissive smiles, they would have hurt her once. But today, they simply reminded her of how much she had grown. Life had taught her that the world judged quickly, often without thinking. But she had learned to stay quiet and let time reveal the truth. After a few minutes, the door opened, and a tall man with kind eyes stepped in. His hair was slightly gray at the sides, giving him a dignified look. His expression softened when he saw Amina. "You made it," he said warmly. Amina stood out of respect. "Yes, thank you for calling me." He gestured for her to sit. "I apologize for the confusion downstairs. I didn't expect them to keep you waiting that long. Sometimes people make assumptions. Don't take it personally." Amina nodded gently. She didn't complain. She didn't explain. She simply listened. The director sat across from her and studied her with genuine interest. "Your work has always impressed me," he said. "And your ideas were some of the most insightful ones we received last year. I've been waiting for the chance to speak with you in person." Amina felt a quiet warmth spread through her. She looked down briefly, humbled by his words. "Thank you," she said softly. He opened a folder in front of him. "Before we discuss the next steps, I want to know how you are feeling about this opportunity. I understand coming from a smaller village and stepping into a place like this can be overwhelming." Amina met his eyes. "It is different," she admitted, "but I'm ready. I've worked hard to come here. I want to learn. I want to contribute. I may look simple, but I'm not afraid of challenges." The director smiled as if reassured. "That's exactly why we reached out to you. Talent isn't measured by appearance. It's measured by commitment, and you've proven that many times." Amina felt a sense of relief. Someone believed in her not because of her background, but because of her ability. The director closed the folder and leaned forward slightly. "You'll spend the first part of the day meeting different teams. I want them to understand who you are and what you bring. After that, we'll discuss your long-term role here." Amina nodded again. "I'm ready." He stood. "Good, let's begin." They walked out of the meeting room and moved toward a large office area. The moment they stepped in, several employees turned their heads. Some were surprised, others were confused. A few whispered to one another. Amina kept her posture calm. She walked beside the director, not saying much, but quietly observing everything around her. The director introduced her to the first team marketing. A group of young professionals stood up politely, but Amina could sense their hesitation. One of them, a confident-looking woman, stepped forward with a forced smile. "Welcome," she said. "I hope the commute wasn't too difficult." Amina understood what she meant. She had dealt with this tone before, polite on the outside, doubtful on the inside. She replied with a gentle smile. "Thank you." "One managed well," the director spoke before anyone else could. "Amina is someone whose ideas caught our attention months ago. I'd like you all to hear her suggestions for our upcoming project." The team exchanged surprised looks. They hadn't expected that. The director handed Amina a digital tablet. "Take your time. Explain in your own way." She took the tablet with steady hands. She had practiced her ideas many times back, home rewriting them, imagining questions, preparing answers. She knew this moment would come, even if she hadn't known it would be today. She began to speak not too loudly, not too softly. Her voice was calm, confident, meaningful. She explained how the company's approach to rural markets could be improved, She shared stories from her own village, examples of what people truly needed, and how small changes in strategy could bring huge results. The team listened more closely as she continued. Their expressions shifted. The hesitation was replaced by curiosity, then interest, then respect. When Amina finished, the director nodded with pride. This is why she's here. Her insight comes from experience, something data alone can't teach us. The marketing team members looked at one another, impressed. That's actually very useful, one of them said. We never thought about it that way, another added. Amina felt a subtle warmth in her chest. She didn't smile widely, but her eyes softened. She had earned their respect not with expensive clothes or perfect English, but with understanding and effort. They moved on to the next department. The same pattern followed. At first, doubtful glances, then polite interest, then genuine attention. Amina answered their questions clearly. She shared her experiences openly. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't by the time she reached the third department. One of the team leads asked her a question that made her pause. "How did you learn all this?" He asked. "Your ideas are strong, but I'm curious where you've got this level of understanding." Amina took a breath. "I studied every evening," she said. "Sometimes through books, sometimes through online lectures. When my village had electricity problems, I used a small solar lamp. I practiced writing reports by hand when I didn't have a computer. I kept pushing myself." The room fell silent. No one had expected such a simple yet powerful answer. "That's dedication," someone finally said. Amina didn't respond. She simply smiled. As the morning passed, she visited team after team. With each meeting, the energy shifted. People who had looked down on her earlier were now seeing her differently. They realized she wasn't someone who had wandered in by mistake. She was someone with purpose, but not everyone accepted it easily. During one of the sessions, a young man leaned back in his chair and said loud enough for others to hear, "Good ideas, but this is a big company. You'll need more than stories from your village to fit in here." The room went quiet. Several people glanced at him, uncomfortable. Amina didn't get angry. She simply turned to him and asked softly, "Do you think understanding people is less important than understanding systems?" He blinked, unsure how to respond. She continued, "Systems are built by people, and people come from different places, live different lives, and have different needs. If we don't understand that, no company can grow." The room stayed silent for a long moment before the director spoke. "She's right," he said, "and that's exactly why she's here." The young man nodded awkwardly and didn't speak again. By lunchtime, Amina felt tired, but fulfilled. She had spoken more in a few hours than she normally did in a week. Yet something inside her felt strong, almost unshakable. As she sat in the small dining area, a few employees approached her. Unlike earlier, their faces were friendly. "Your ideas were really eye-opening," one woman said. "Yes," another agreed. "We actually learned something new today." Amina thanked them politely. She didn't seek their approval. She didn't need their praise. But she did appreciate seeing their attitudes change. It showed her that patience mattered, that kindness mattered, that staying true to herself mattered. In the afternoon, she returned to the top floor to meet the director again. He looked pleased as she entered. "You handled everything well," he said. The teams were impressed. Amina lowered her eyes humbly. "Thank you. I just spoke from experience. That's all I know." The director leaned back in his chair. "Sometimes experience is exactly what is missing. Now, there is one more thing we need to discuss. Something important." He paused, studying her carefully. "This company is going through a big change soon, and your presence here is not just for today. You will play a much larger role than you realize." Mina's heart beat a little faster. She didn't know what he meant. She didn't know what was coming next, but she could feel it. Something big was unfolding. And she was standing right in the center of it. The morning light slipped gently through the wide glass windows of the tall building, making the lobby shine as if it were polished by the sun itself. Amina walked behind Mr. Khalid, still unsure of what was happening. Her heart kept beating fast, not out of fear, but out of confusion. Only minutes ago, she had been pushed away, mocked, and looked at like she did not belong in this place. Now, she was walking with the man everyone respected, the man who built the company from nothing. Everything felt unreal, like she was living two different days at the same time. Mr. Khalid walked slowly, almost proudly, as if showing her something she had earned long ago. The staff who had earlier ignored her now moved aside with surprise and panic on their faces. Some pretended they were busy, some lowered their heads, and others simply stared like they couldn't understand what they were seeing. But Amina didn't look at anyone. She kept her head straight, trying to calm her breath. She didn't want to show her nervousness. She didn't want to look overwhelmed. She wanted to stay steady, even if her heart felt like it was running a race. When they reached the elevator, Mr. Khalid pressed the top floor button. The doors closed slowly, blocking the view of the shocked employees in the lobby inside the elevator. The silence felt heavy, almost meaningful. Amina finally spoke. "Sir, I don't understand why you asked me to come," she said softly. Mr. Khalid smiled, the kind of smile that holds memories behind it. "You will understand," he said. "You deserve to be here more than anyone realizes." Amina swallowed hard. She didn't know whether to feel grateful, scared, or hopeful. She only knew that something important was happening. When the elevator opened, she stepped into a quiet hallway. The air felt different on this floor. Calmer, more serious, almost like every decision made here changed something big. Large framed photographs hung on the walls, showing the company's journey from a tiny office to the tall building they stood in. At the end of the hallway was a glass boardroom with a long table made of dark polished wood. Important people sat inside: directors, senior managers, and advisors. They had been waiting for Mr. Khalid to arrive. No one expected him to walk in with a young woman from a remote village. When they saw Amina, whispers filled the room. Some looked confused. Some looked annoyed. Some didn't hide their judgment at all. Mr. Khalid raised a hand, signaling everyone to calm down. "Good morning, everyone," he said. "Before we begin, I want to introduce someone very important." Amina felt the room's attention shift to her like a spotlight. She wished she could disappear, but she stayed still. "This is Amina," he continued. "You all may not know her, but she has played a role in shaping this company's future." The board members exchanged looks. It was clear they were struggling to understand what he meant. One of the directors, a man with silver hair and sharp eyes, cleared his throat. "Sir, forgive me for asking, but who exactly is she?" Mr. Khalid chuckled softly. "The one who helped me design the entire 3-year growth plan that you all approved last year." The room fell silent. Amina felt their eyes shift. Some widened slightly. Some blinked in disbelief. "She was the best student I ever mentored," he added. Her ideas were years ahead of their time. A woman sitting near the end of the table leaned forward. "But she looks so young," she whispered, as if surprised. "And great minds do not wait for age." Mr. Khalid responded calmly. Amina didn't say anything. She didn't even know what to say. She had worked on that project in private, never expecting it to be shown or acknowledged like this. She didn't know he had shared it with the board. She certainly didn't expect him to bring up her name. He motioned for her to sit, and she took a seat beside him. For the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of her hard work no one had seen. Work she had done late at night while living in a small room and surviving on savings. Now people who once looked down on her were trying to figure out who she really was. The meeting began. Charts, reports, and future plans were discussed. But throughout it all, the directors kept glancing at Amina. Their expressions had changed. They didn't see a poor girl from a village anymore. They saw someone who had done something they couldn't believe. After a while, Mr. Khalid leaned back in his chair and spoke in a calm but serious voice. "I have called all of you here today for an important reason," he said. "As you know, I am stepping down this year." Everyone nodded. They were aware this day was coming. "But what you don't know," he continued, "is that I have made my final decision regarding the future leadership of the company." The room became silent again. Some looked excited. Some looked nervous. Many had been expecting a competition for the top seat. They waited for him to name one of them, but he DND instead. He turned to Amina. "She is the person I trust the most with this company," he announced. A loud wave of whispers broke out. A director quickly spoke up. "Sir, are you saying she will be part of the leadership team?" Mr. Khalid shook his head. "No," he said. "I am saying something bigger than that." He placed a document folder on the table. "I have sold my majority shares," he said slowly to her. No one spoke. No one even moved. It felt like the world had paused. Amina stared at him, her eyes widening. She hadn't known this. She had no idea this was his plan. "You sold them to me?" she whispered. He nodded. "You earned it," he said, "through your work, your honesty, your strength, and your vision. You never asked for anything. You never complained. You simply worked hard, even when no one saw you." Amina felt her throat tighten. She didn't know whether to feel grateful or scared. This was too big, bigger than anything she'd ever imagined. The board members were in complete shock. Some looked upset. Some looked confused. Some stared at her as if trying to understand how a girl they had mocked minutes ago could suddenly become someone important. One director, clearly frustrated, finally said, "Sir, with respect, how can someone so young lead a company this large?" Mr. Khalid smiled. "Because she has already done it," he said. "You just didn't know it." His voice echoed in the quiet room. Amina felt tears gather behind her eyes, but she held them back. She wanted to stay strong. She wanted to prove that she deserved everything he was giving her. Mr. Khalid stood up and motioned for her to stand as well. "Come," he said gently. She stood beside him. "We will go downstairs now," he said, "and you will see how things change when the truth comes to light." Amina nodded slowly. She still felt overwhelmed, but she followed him. She didn't know what the reactions would be when everyone found out. But she knew one thing: her life had changed forever, and her journey was just beginning. Amina sat quietly in the director's office, her hands resting on her simple bag. She didn't know what he meant when he said she would play a much larger role. But something in his voice made her pay even closer attention. He wasn't talking about a regular position or a small assignment. There was a seriousness in his tone, a weight behind his words. The director stood up and walked toward the window. The city stretched out before them: busy roads, tall buildings, people rushing from one place to another. Amina wondered how many stories were unfolding at the same time. How many dreams, how many struggles, how many moments of courage. Finally, he spoke. "You know," he said softly. "Still looking outside, when this company started, it was nothing more than a small project. We didn't have big offices or large teams. We didn't even have confidence from investors. But we had hope. And we had people who believed in building something meaningful." Amina listened, unsure where the story was going, but she sensed it was important. He turned around and faced her. "I am stepping down soon," he said, "and I've spent months thinking about who should guide this company next. Many people expect me to choose someone from the senior team, someone with long experience here. But experience alone doesn't guarantee vision." He paused. "Vision is what builds a future." Amina felt her breath catch for a moment. She didn't move. She didn't even blink. "You have something that many don't," he continued. "You understand what people need. You understand how small changes can create big impact. You see things others overlook. And most importantly, you remain patient even when people misunderstand you. That is a rare strength." Amina looked down, overwhelmed. She didn't know how to respond. The director smiled gently. "Walk with me. I want to show you something." He led her out of the office and down the quiet hallway. Every step echoed softly against the polished floor. Amina followed closely, her mind filled with questions she wasn't ready to ask. They reached a door she hadn't noticed earlier. The director pushed it open, and Amina stepped inside. The room was large and bright, almost like a gallery. Framed pictures lined the walls, photos of the company's founding days. Early achievements, team milestones, community projects. Amina walked through the room slowly, studying each picture. One photo showed the director standing beside a small group of employees in a tiny office. Another showed a community event where the company had helped build a learning center. There were pictures of product launches, awards, and families whose lives had changed through job opportunities. Amina stopped in front of a picture, showing the director with a group of young interns. She recognized the image from the company website. It was one of their most shared stories. These people came from different backgrounds, the director said behind her. Some from cities, some from villages, some with degrees, some with only passion. What they all had in common was a desire to grow. That's what made this company what it is today. Amina nodded softly. Still absorbing everything, the director continued, "When I first saw your work, I saw a reflection of what this company used to be: simple, honest, determined, and focused on real people." He took a slow breath. "And that's why you're here today. Not just to consult, not just to share ideas, but to become part of something much bigger." Mina finally gathered the car. The elevator ride back down felt longer than usual. Even though the numbers on the panel blinked at their normal pace, Amina stood beside Mr. Khalid, her hands pressed softly together, trying to settle the storm of emotions inside her. She could still hear the echoes of the boardroom conversation in her mind. She could still see the shock on their faces. She could still feel the weight of the decision that had been placed on her shoulders. She tried to breathe slowly, but her chest felt tight. Everything had happened too fast. A few hours ago, she was just a hopeful girl looking for an opportunity. Now she was being introduced as the new owner of a company she once only dreamed of. Entering, when the elevator reached the ground floor, the doors slid open, revealing the same lobby where she had been laughed at, judged, and pushed aside. Except now, the atmosphere felt different. People turned to look at the elevator, expecting to see someone important step out. And they did, but it wasn't the person they expected. Mr. Khalid walked out first. Amina followed him, standing a little straighter than before, though her heart still thumped with uncertainty. The moment she stepped into the lobby, whispers began immediately. The same employees who had earlier judged her now looked confused. Some even looked scared. Sensing that something unusual was happening, a young man at the reception desk froze when he saw her. His face went pale, as if he had seen a ghost. He remembered how he had spoken to her earlier. The cold tone, the dismissive attitude. Amina's eyes briefly met his, and he quickly looked down, pretending to type something on his keyboard. "Everyone, please gather," Mr. Khalid said in a strong, calm voice. His words spread through the office quickly, like wind moving through a field. Employees stepped out of their departments, walked out of the hallways, and gathered in the spacious lobby. There were dozens of them, some in suits, some carrying files, some still holding their morning teacups. They stood in a semicircle. Facing the man they had respected for years, Mr. Khalid glanced at Amina and nodded gently, as if telling her she wasn't alone. She took a quiet breath. He stepped forward. "Many of you have been with this company for a long time," he began. "You know how much effort it took to build it? And today, I have something important to share with all of you." The crowd fell silent. Not a single sound of typing, walking, or talking echoed through the lobby. "As you know," he continued, "I am retiring this year." Several employees nodded, although sadness was visible on their faces. They respected him deeply, but I couldn't leave without making sure the company would be in the right hands. People looked around, trying to guess who he would name. Many expected one of the department heads. Some expected the senior manager. A few thought it might be someone who had worked closely with him. No one expected the truth. And then,
Mr. Khalid said it.
"The new owner of this company," he announced, "is standing beside me." All heads turned toward Amina. A wave of shock moved across the room like a sudden gust of wind. Some eyes widened. Some mouths opened slightly. A few people looked completely speechless. Amina felt a rush of heat in her face, but she kept her posture steady. One employee whispered loudly enough for others to hear her, "But she just came in today," another murmured. "I thought she was here for an entry-level job." A woman standing near the front pressed her hand against her forehead in disbelief. "What is happening?" she whispered. Mr. Khalid raised his hand to calm the murmurs. "Before any of you judge her," he said firmly, "you should know the truth." Everyone fell silent again, this young woman, he continued, was the mind behind the 3-year expansion plan that all of you have worked so hard to execute.
Us.
Filled the room. She created those ideas long before she even dreamed of coming here, he said. When she shared her work with me years ago, I knew she had a rare kind of mind, one that sees beyond what others ignore. People looked at her differently now. Not with judgment, but with curiosity and a hint of respect. The junior manager, who had been rude to her in the morning, looked especially uncomfortable. His earlier arrogance had vanished. Now he looked small, unsure, deeply embarrassed. Mr. Khalid wasn't finished. There is something else you should understand, he said slowly. She has faced struggles many of us could never imagine. She came from a place where opportunities are rare, yet she never stopped learning. Never stopped working. Never stopped believing. Amina felt her throat tighten again, but she blinked the feeling away. She stands here not because of luck, he said, but because of hard work, honesty, and dedication. The room stayed silent. The employees were listening carefully now, no longer caught up in their earlier assumptions. And today, he said, I place this company in her hands. I trust her with its future. He turned slightly and looked at Amina. The company belongs to her now. Amina could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her. It was a different kind of pressure than she had felt before. It wasn't just judgment anymore. It was expectation. It was responsibility. Mr. Khalid stepped aside, giving her room to speak. Amina hesitated for a moment. Her heart raced. She wasn't used to speaking in front of so many people, but she knew she had to. She owed it to herself, to him, and to the truth. She stepped forward. Thank you, she said quietly, her voice slightly unsteady. I know this is surprising for all of you. It's surprising for me too. Some people smiled gently, appreciating her honesty. I didn't come here today expecting any of this, she continued. I came hoping for a chance, just like anyone else. But I also came knowing who I am. She paused, looking around at the faces watching her. I know I don't look like what most people expect from a company owner, she said softly. I know some of you thought I didn't belong here, and I understand why. I come from a place where life is simple. I grew up with very little, and everything I learned because I wanted to change my life. A few employees shifted uncomfortably, remembering how they had looked at her earlier. I don't judge anyone for how they treated me in the morning, she said, because you didn't know me. But I hope that from today onward, we can learn not to judge people by how they look or where they come from. She took another breath, feeling her voice grow steadier. I promise I will do my best, she said. Not just for myself, but for all of you. And for the company that gave me a chance before I even walked through these doors. Her words hung in the air softly, but they carried a strong meaning. The room was silent for a second. Then slowly, people began to clap. First a few, then more. Then almost everyone. The sound filled the lobby. Some clapped with pride, some with relief, some with newfound respect. Amina didn't smile widely, but her eyes softened. She felt something warm inside her, feeling she hadn't felt in a long time, belonging for the first time that day. She felt like she truly belonged. Mr. Khalid placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You did well, he whispered. Amina nodded. Her journey was far from over. But one thing was clear. She wasn't the same girl who walked into the building in the morning. She was someone different now. Someone stronger. Someone ready. And this was only the beginning of what she was meant to achieve. The applause in the lobby slowly faded, but the warmth it left behind stayed with Amina as she stood there, breathing in the moment. It didn't feel real, not completely. It felt like she was watching someone else's life unfold. Yet every pair of eyes looking at her told her this was happening, right here, right now. She was no longer the girl people had pushed aside in the morning. She was someone who had earned her place through years of effort no one had seen but everyone now felt. Mr. Khalid gently stepped back, giving her the space to breathe and take in everything around her. He didn't try to lead the moment anymore. It belonged to her now. As the crowd slowly dispersed, a few people stayed behind, unsure if they should approach her or keep their distance. Some of them wanted to apologize, but they didn't know how. Others simply didn't know what to say. Amina understood their hesitation. She herself wasn't sure what came next. A woman from the human resources desk walked toward her slowly, holding a small notebook against her chest. She looked nervous, almost shy. I just wanted to say congratulations, she said softly. And I'm sorry if I made you feel unwelcome earlier. It wasn't my intention. I just didn't know. Amina gave her a gentle nod. It's all right, she replied. We all learn. The woman smiled with relief and walked away. Then the young man from the reception desk stepped forward. His face looked heavy with guilt. I'm really sorry for how I spoke to you, he said without looking directly at her. I shouldn't have treated you that way. Amina watched him quietly for a moment before responding. Thank you for saying that, she said. I hope we can start fresh. His shoulders relaxed, and he nodded gratefully. When they left, Amina allowed herself a moment of silence. She felt the weight of responsibility settling into her like a new heartbeat, steady, strong, and impossible to ignore. Mr. Khalid walked up beside her. How are you feeling? She let out a slow breath. I don't know, she admitted with a small laugh. It's a lot. That's how you know it matters, he said kindly. They walked toward his old office together, a place she had only seen in pictures. It felt strange to walk past desks and hear people whisper words like owner and leader when referring to her. She didn't let it distract her, though. She focused on what was ahead. Once they reached the office, Mr. Khalid opened the door and stepped aside. Go on, he said. It's yours now. Amina hesitated before entering. The room felt bigger than she expected. The shelves were filled with years of memories, awards, photographs, old project files. The large window showed a wide view of the city, with buildings standing proudly under the afternoon sky. She stepped inside slowly, running her fingers along the edge of the wooden desk. It felt unreal, touching a place she had only imagined. Mr. Khalid watched her quietly. You earned this, he reminded her. Amina nodded. I hope I can do justice to it. I know you will, he said with certainty. He placed a small box on the desk. This is for you. She opened it and found a simple silver pen inside. It wasn't shiny or decorated. It was the kind of pen that had been used many times. This is the pen I used when I signed the company's first contract, he said. And I want you to have it, so when you sign your first decision as the owner, you remember where it all began. Amina held the pen gently, feeling its history. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded. I should leave you now. The company needs its new leader. Amina felt a tug in her chest. Will you be all right? He laughed softly. I'm retiring, not disappearing. I'll be around if you need advice, but from now on, this place answers to you. With that, he gave her one last warm look before walking out of the office. The door closed gently behind him. Amina stood alone in the quiet room. The city outside moved like it always did, unaware of the change happening inside this building. She walked toward the window and let the light fall on her face. The moment felt like standing at the edge of a new world. She thought about her village, about the dusty roads she had walked on as a child. The evenings she spent studying with a lantern because the electricity often failed. The times she doubted whether she would ever make it out. The people who told her she was dreaming too big and now she was here. She wasn't done yet. With so much she wanted to do. So many improvements she dreamed of bringing. So much she wanted to change for the better. She sat down at the desk and opened a clean notebook, the first page untouched. She placed the silver pen in her hand and wrote the first sentence. Every person deserves a chance to prove themselves. She read the words once, then closed the book gently. She wasn't writing this for anyone else. She was writing it for herself to remind her of the promise she wanted to keep. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She looked up and saw the junior manager who had been rude to her earlier. His posture was stiff, and his eyes were lower than before. May I come in? He asked quietly. Amina nodded. He stepped inside slowly. I wanted to apologize, he said. I misjudged you, and I shouldn't have spoken the way I did. Amina watched him carefully. She could see he meant it. I accept your apology, she said gently. He let out a breath he'd been holding. Thank you, and If you ever need support in the operations department, I'll do my best. Amina appreciated that. Thank you. I want us to work together. He nodded and left the room. When the door closed, Amina leaned back in her chair. She realized something important. Leadership wasn't about being feared or showing power. It was about how you lifted others, even those who doubted you. As the evening sun settled lower in the sky, she stood up again. The office was quiet, peaceful, and filled with possibility. She walked to the door and opened it, ready to step into the hallway, not as a visitor. Not as someone overlooked, but as someone who had earned her place as she walked through the office floor. People stood straighter, not out of fear, but out of respect. She greeted them warmly. Every smile she gave was sincere. Every smile she received back felt like a small step toward something better. Before leaving for the day, she paused at the entrance of the building. She looked back one more time at the place that had changed her life. She whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." And with that, she stepped outside into the soft evening air. The city lights slowly brightened, and for the first time since she arrived, she felt completely at peace. Her journey had been long, full of challenges, doubts, and moments of loneliness. But now she stood tall, ready to build something meaningful, something that would inspire anyone who came after her. The rural girl everyone once looked down on had become the leader they never expected. And she wasn't done yet, not even close.